Welcome to the Writer's Den. My name is Jane Waters Thomas, and with us today we have a very exciting interview with a good friend and a longtime community friend, Miss Barbara Hart. And Miss Barbara, welcome.
Thank you, and you don't know how happy I am to be here.
Well, we are thrilled you are here, and I love that you are wearing the shirt for our subject today, which is your newly finished book, Memories of Mr. George.
Yes, and I happen to have a picture of the front of the book right here.
You were writing it, and everybody kind of heard bits and pieces of, oh, it's coming, and now it's finally here. How does that feel?
Oh, well, it feels pretty good. It really does. I'm very happy. Actually, I thought it was going to be finished in April, but it looks like now it might be June, so that's okay.
That is okay.
And as long as it gets here.
Absolutely. Now, Miss Barbara, this book is about Mr. George, your longtime friend. Tell us a little bit about what the inspiration was to put your story on paper for others to read.
Well, actually, my daughter is the one that put the idea. She said, "Mom, you need to write a book about Mr. George because you knew him so well and you could actually think like him." And she said, I just think that you should write a book. And she told me that so many years ago, I'm embarrassed to even say.
Mm-hmm. Well, it takes a little bit of time to get those thoughts together to be able to do something like that. And I know that I think the first time that you mentioned the book to me, you were in the writing process. And as with all great books, there's stopping points where you go, how hard was it for you to get from I'm going to do this, the day you were like, I'm going to write this book, to today where you can say it's going to be out and on the market in June? How many times do you think you had like stopping points in there?
Oh, I have no idea, but probably thousands.
Well, I think that gives all of us encouragement that are out here writing our stories, and we get stuck and we have writer's block and get to those stopping points where sometimes I think that it feels discouraging almost because you're working on it and you have the plan and then all of a sudden it's like, everything stops. Did that happen for you?
Oh, yes, a lot. I'm involved with so many things, and I play cards, and you know, I run around all the time. I just act like I'm a teenager.
I think that's wonderful. So let's talk a little bit about Mr. George, the inspiration for the book, and some of the fun stories that are in this book for people to read. Now, Mr. George, to those in our region, those all over the state, those out of state, is the founder of Publix, which is the only food shopping experience anybody should have, we know. But tell me a little bit about Mr. George and why he was so interesting to write about.
Well, I don't know. I mean, he was number one, he was the best boss I ever had. When I went to work at Publix in 1971, I had been in banking my entire life. I had started making checks in Cincinnati, Ohio. I ended up being in every department in a bank but trust. And I was supervisor in many of those. And if you think my banking background didn't help me working with Mr. George, you're crazy.
That is funny. So you were really on the inside of some of the big decisions that were made and some of the big happenings that took place. Are there some fun stories in that? Because running a business the size of Publix cannot always be easy.
Yes. Well, there's a lot of fun stuff. Every time Mr. George asked me to do something, I always told him I learned it in the Army. For example, he always came in the side door when he came to Publix, and the office door went like that. And so he would come in leave on Wednesday, for example, and he'd be leaving at 11:45 to go to Lone Palm to play golf and have lunch and then play golf. And so he would come back and I'd hear that, and he'd come to the door and he said, "When you was in the Army, did you learn how to start cars?" I said, "Oh yes, I did, Mr. George." So I go out the door, take his key, put it in the car, turn the key, roll down the window, shut the door. It goes, starts running like a clock. And I get out and he said, "Now what did you do?" I'd look him straight in the eye and I'd say, "Mr. George, you're just going to have to go in the Army." I've often thought that he probably passed away thinking I was in the Army.
That is funny, and you hadn't been.
I haven't been in the Army.
Been in the Army. That is so funny. So Did you ever think when you started back with Mr. George, so long ago, that Publix would be what it is today?
Well, maybe not as big as it is, but I mean it's wonderful.
But
That's
how
all
exciting.
I can say.
Yeah, it's very exciting. So, Miss Barbara, so in 1971, you're coming to Lakeland. Did you think you were going to work at Publix when you came to Lakeland?
No, I came to work. I came over here in February and applied for a job in June because that's when my daughter got out of school. And so I went to 3 banks, and I got a job at all 3 banks. So on my way out of Lakeland, I stopped by Carolyn Graham Kelly's office where she worked at People's Bank when I was only 18. I stopped by to see her, and I was telling her about I had 3 jobs and I was going back to Tampa and figure out which one I wanted. And she said, well, you need to go to Publix. She said, that's the best place in town to work. And I said, oh, yeah, okay. So I did. I went by Publix. So I go in, and they send me up to Human Resources to Mr. Bud Ruth's office, and he informed me how they promote from within, and just told me all this stuff. And I said, look, I said, I got 3 jobs in 3 banks. I'm going back to Tampa. And he said, okay. So I left. Well, that was on a Thursday morning, and on Friday morning, I was the new account officer at Exchange National Bank in Tampa, my second time to be there. And so anyway, I got a phone call. I said, new accounts, Barbara Hart, may I help you? And this guy said, this is Bill Schroeder, and I'm vice president of marketing at Publix in Lakeland. And I wondered if you would like to come back over and have an interview with me. I said, oh, no. I said, I came yesterday, and the bank didn't even dock me for being off. And I said, I could never come back over there. Well, could you come on Saturday? And I said, well, if you guys work on Saturday, I don't even want to work there. And he said, no, some of the men do, but the women don't. And I said, okay, I'll come over Saturday. So this fella that I was dating took Carla over and took her to Eckerd's for across the street, and gave her breakfast while I had my interview. And so, I'll go on back to Tampa. So that's how that all happened. I get a phone call from the vice president. So anyway, I got the job.
The rest is history.
Yeah.
The rest is history.
Well, the lady that I got the job from, she gave me 5 addresses. My address book, I cross-referenced. It was that thick when I left there. Oh my. But she didn't want me to get the job. So she only gave me 5 addresses. So.
Well, you got the job, and now
well, so roll ahead in 1973. Well, actually, in September of '71, there was a 5-some playing golf out at Lone Palm. Mr. George, Mr. Charlie, Dr. Cather, Hubert Stolen, Henry Stolen, the president of the bank in Tampa, and Ernest McClurg, the president of People's Bank, where I worked when I wasn't but 18. So they were all to 5-some. And Henry Tolson comes up to the hole and he says, George, you just got one of my best girls. And he said, who's that? And he said, Barbara Hart. He said, I don't know any Barbara Hart. And Charlie spoke up. Charlie used to come by and cut up with me all the time. I was across the hall. So he said, oh yeah, you do? That's a little brunette working for Bill Schroeder. He said, well, I'll tell you one thing. That girl doesn't have Kent in her vocabulary. Ernest McClurg from People's Bank of Lakeland, 18 years old. He said, I got one for you better than that. I got her when she was 18 off of a train because she was afraid to fly. She didn't have Kent in her vocabulary at 18 years old. And so roll ahead. 1973, Mr. George's secretary was an old maid, and she went back to a class reunion. She decided to marry her high school sweetheart. So when she left, they called me up to personnel, and Bud Ruth offered me the job. I said, nope, I can't take it. I said, Bud Ruth, I've got to work another 25 years. And he said, well, what if we told you we'd never make you work for anybody you don't want to? We'll never change your paycheck. We'll never make you move out of your office. And we'll never take your bonus away. And I said, bonus? He said, yes, you get a yearly staff bonus. And I said, Mr. Ruth, would you put that in writing? And he said, yes, I will. And I said, I'll take it.
How fun.
So 2 girls didn't speak to me for about, 6 months. But I quit going to the coffee shop at 10 o'clock every morning. I went early. Unfortunately, I smoked back then. But I'd go early and get my coffee and go back to my desk and drink my coffee so I could give everybody time to do all the talking they wanted to do.
Right.
And like I said, these 2 girls didn't speak to me for a few months, and they both came in and apologized to me for treating me the way they did. They said I didn't change one bit when I moved across the hall. And so those 2 ladies are still living, and we're friends.
That's exciting. Well, I think one of the nice things in talking to you over the last year about the book and how excited you were just the fun stories, just the good history of a very strong, dynamic leader and corporate business owner, and your relationship as part of his staff and being able to see what he was doing. You told me once about a story about a driver.
Oh, yes.
And I would love for you to share that story with our viewers, if you don't mind.
Oh, I would love to tell you that story. Okay. He came in, Mr. George came in on a Monday morning, and he said, Barbara, I want you to find me a driver. I want him to take me to my doctor's appointments. I want him to bring me to work. I want me to take him to Lone Palm, take me out on dates, whatever. I said, how long do I have? He said, as long as it takes. So I go in there on a Wednesday morning, again, 11:30. I said, okay, Mr. George, I got your driver. He said, okay, tell me about it. I said, well, his name is Roger Garrett. Incidentally, Roger was just down to see me about 3 weeks ago. We're still, 1979, we're still good friends. So anyway, I said he's got a clean record, he has no baggage, he's going to live with you, he's going to eat with you, he's going to take you out to dinner, he's going to do everything for you. I've even worked out his salary. And he said, well, you've done a doggone good job.
So, Miss Barbara, we know that Mr. George had a lot of dealings with a lot of people, but there's a special Clint Eastwood story that you have, right?
Right. When Mr. George was going to go to California and receive the American Academy of Achievement Award, he invited my daughter Carla, Sharon Miller, and I to go with him to this function. So we flew into San Francisco, and I rented a car, and I drove the whole West Coast. So driving through there, we stopped in Caramel. Clint Eastwood owns that restaurant. So I left the girls in the car, parked my car, walked down this wooded walkway, and I walked in, and there sat Clint at the front table talking to a friend. And I stood there a few minutes, and then they acknowledged me. And I said, Clint, excuse me, I just have one favor to ask of you. And he said, yes, ma'am, what's that? I said, I'm going to be in San Francisco Saturday night at the American Academy of Achievement Award. And all I want you to do is one thing. He said, what's that? I said, whenever you walk in the room and they put the medallion on you and you look up, all I want you to do is say, well, hello there, Barbara. And he said, yes, ma'am, I'll do it. So we get to the American Academy of Achievement, and Saturday night comes, and they're giving the awards. Well, Mr. George let me go. I didn't tell Mr. George this story. I didn't tell him about it. Stop it. So they're putting on the medallion around Clint Eastwood's neck, and I'm in the back walking up with a cocktail in my hand, and I go, well, hello there, Clint. He says, well, hello there, Barbara. The women almost fainted.
That is a great
That
story.
is hilarious.
What did Mr. George do?
Oh, he thought it was hilarious. He just knew I was up to one of my tricks.
Can't's not in your vocabulary.
That's right.
I love that. I love that. So as we talk about all these fun stories, I'm going to bring up Andy Bean because I've heard some of the story. I'm sure there's more to it. Talk to us a little bit about Mr. George and you and Andy Bean.
Okay. I remember the day very well. It was in 1979. And Andy Bean came in the office and he wanted to see Mr. George. So, of course, he went on in. And he begged Mr. George, just let me buy 1 share of Publix stock. And Mr. George says, nope. Andy, he said, I'm sorry, but I can't do that. He said, if I do that for you, I have to do it for other people, and it's not fair. And he was a very fair man. So he said, and I'll tell you another thing. You can't be a member of Lone Palm Golf Course because my friends that play golf out there don't want to play with a pro. So you can't do it. So through the years, Andy and I have become quite close friends. So I'm involved with the First Tee, and they sponsor every year, you know, for in honor and memory of Mr. George. And I went this year, of course, too. So anyway, Andy reminded me of that. So I have Andy's cell number. So I called Andy one morning, and I said, Andy, you going to be around your phone this afternoon? He said, yes, ma'am. I said, well, I'm going to give you a call. So I went to the stock office with the stock power form. And I go out there and I look him up, and I got his real name. I'm a detective, so I put it in his exact name. And I transferred 10 shares of Publix stock to Andy Bean. And as I was doing that, gave her all the information, I called Andy. And I said, Andy, I'm at the stock office, and I've given her all the information, your home address and everything you need, but she needs your Social Security number, so I'm going to hand her the phone. So I handed her the phone.
That's
So
sweet.
I actually sold Andy Bean. It was $400.50, and he sent me $450, so I made money on that.
See, all those years in banking
And so
pay
all
off.
the way home, I could just hear Mr. George going, you go, Barbara, you go, Barbara.
I love it. So now we're to a lockbox, and Mr. George has very specific instructions for you. How did that go?
Okay, Mr. George had a lockbox upstairs at Publix, and he told me that he didn't want anybody in his lockbox as long as he was alive. Okay, so anyway, the officers of Publix were coming in there, and he'd had this stroke. Well, when he had his stroke, I went over to his house, and I hid my key. He gave me a key to it. And I hid my key under the desk, the top of the desk, under it. I scotch taped it upside down. And he had his key on the key ring. So when he had a stroke, I went over there and got the nurse to go upstairs and get his keys and bring it down, and I took his key off. So now I've got both keys to the lockbox. Okay? So Charlie Jr. comes into me one day, and he said, Barbara, he said, we're trying to get Uncle George to sign off of these 4 corporations because it's costing Publix a lot of money, you know. So anyway, I said, yeah, I hear you. I know what you're doing, you know. So anyway, they wanted to know about Lone Palm, and I said, I can tell you. It's to be operated as a first-class golf course for 30 years after his demise. Well, that wasn't good enough. They had to get in the box. So I said, every time I'll ask him in there, he's going, Barbara, Barbara. It's the way he said Barbara after his stroke. And I said, I hear y'all in there. I know. He wanted you to ask me. So anyway, he asked me. But anyway, the bottom line was, I sat there with both keys and wrote a list of everything in his lockbox and paid Miller Safe and Lock for drilling the box that I had both keys to. That was my devotion to that man.
Wonderful,
Yes.
wonderful. I want to continue with a couple of more stories, and this has been an exciting interview as we get to see
Thank
some
you.
of the life and times of Mr. George Jenkins through your eyes and your heart, and I appreciate you sharing with us and through your book to everyone so much. So tell me about the taxi ride to the bank that may have not gone the way it was supposed to.
Oh, yes. Okay, that was my first big boo-boo with him. I hadn't been working for him very long, and so he had to go to a bank board meeting for the Bank of America. So I got him a ticket to go to Charleston. So I'm sitting, he's supposed to be in the bank board meeting. I'm sitting at my desk. It's 11 o'clock. I get a call from the bank board, and Mr. George wasn't there. And I said, "You're kidding me. He should have been there." He said, "No." And I said, "Where did you say you are?" And he said, "Charlotte." I said, "Oh, my stars, I sent him to Charleston." Oh, man, did I start praying.
Right.
So, anyway, I kept on, you know, I just about had a fit. So, next morning, I got there early, and as soon as I heard that, when he came in that side door, I got up and I went in there and I said, "Oh, Mr. George, I am so sorry. Oh, I can't believe I sent you to the wrong place. I am so sorry." I was crying. He said, "Don't worry about it." He said, "They held up the meeting for me." And he said, "I had this woman drive me. That was about an hour and 15 minutes from the airport." And he said, "We got on the road and she had a flat tire. I bought her a new tire. We got down the road a little bit further and she had another flat tire." He said, "So I bought her 4 new flat tires." He said, "And they held up the meeting for me. And the lady got these 4 new tires. Hey, it was a good day." That was the way he looked at things.
What a terrific outlook, and what a blessing to work with someone and for someone who views everything from that perspective.
Right, right.
It is a testament to the incredible success of Publix.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes.
Miss Barbara, if somebody wants to get a copy of your book, what is the best way for them to do that?
Well, the best way to do it is to get it from me, because my book is going to sell for $12. It's a hardback. Mm-hmm. It has this picture on the front of it, and they can have it, you know, sent to their home. I'm sure that Books A Million will carry it, and Amazon's probably going to carry it, and probably Publix. But those folks are going to pay more than $12 there. So
sure.
You'll be able to get it on the web, yes.
You know, Miss Barbara, you had such a close relationship with Mr. George. You were in his office, you know, you knew rather the kind of intimate details that were going on in the office environment of Publix. In your own words, tell me who Mr. George was.
Well, to begin with, he was George Washington Jenkins, Jr., born in Warm Springs, Georgia. And he was absolutely an immaculate person. The truth is, he went to Winter Haven every Wednesday morning early before he came to work, knowing the ads come out on Thursday, and got his mustache trimmed, got his nails done, because he didn't want to have, got his hands, got everything. He just wanted to be really nice so he could be shaking hands with the employees or with the customers as they came in. So he was just really very laid back. There wasn't but 2 times that I had ever seen that cigar down. So he always had that cigar up, you know. Lovely. So he was just a very pleasant, he was the best boss I ever had.
Well, he certainly has been one of the most generous contributors to community in Polk County and far beyond at this point. And we know that we are blessed for all that he has been and continues to be in our community.
Right. I did ask him one time, Mr. George, I want to ask you a question. I said, why did you start your foundation in 1956? And he said, because I knew if I gave my 10% to the church, to my church, I would ruin it, because maybe others would feel like they didn't. He said, I did it so I could give, And I'm the one that asked him one time, at Christmas time, he always sent a bunch of checks to Georgia, to his family and all that. And that's the one checks that he signed. He signed them himself, every one of them. And I said to him one day, Mr. George, how much do you think you'd be worth if you hadn't given away so much money? He said, probably nothing. A lot of people claim that, but I'm the one that really did it.
Wow, that is such a beautiful story. Miss Barbara, I cannot thank you enough for coming and doing this interview with us at the Writer's Den. I'm excited about your book. I know you have a book signing that's coming up, and our viewers will be able to see the details of when that book signing is and how they can catch copies of your new book in June when it's finally released. Oh my goodness, we've been waiting, haven't we?
Yes, and I want to say, Jane, I just really, really have enjoyed this. I've always thought the world of you, and I'm so happy to have met you and be your friend and sing with you in karaoke.
Yeah,
right. Yes, yes.
That's just fun stuff.
By the way, I think that Ronnie McDowell is coming to my card signing, my book signing.
Oh, how fun.
Yes.
Well, I'm
Yes.
looking forward to your book
Yes.
signing for sure, and we're going to
Yes.
have a great time. So with that, I'm going to have us sign off, and our viewers are going to be waiting, I am sure, on the edge of their seat for your book to come out in June.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you
ma'am.
so
Thank
much,
you.
Jane. Love you.
Love
Okay.
you. What an exciting interview we've had today with Miss Barbara Hart and her sharing her brand new book about one of the absolute founding corporate members of our region, Mr. George Jenkins, and her book, Memories of Mr. George. Be sure to get one of the first copies as they come out in June and be looking for her book signing. Thank you for joining us at the Writer's Den. We'll see you next time.